Hello, my name is William, the Avid reader, and today I am reviewing A Game of Thrones, written by George R. Martin in 1996. So this is the first book in the epic fantasy series Song of Ice and Fire, aka Game of Thrones, but this book is called A Game of Thrones. And it's quite thick, it's about 800 pages, and yeah, so there are 7 points of views, and most of them are from the House of Stark bloodline. So the point of view characters, so you got Eddard Stark, so oh yeah, and by the way, spoilers in this review. You've got Eddard Stark, so he's the leader of the House of Stark, and he's a very honorable man. So when, for example, he finds out that the Lannister twins are practicing incest, he doesn't say anything because he knows that his friend will kill the bastardized children. And then and he ends up paying the price for that in the end, the very heavy price. Then you've got the wife Caitlyn, and mother of the Stark children. Then you've got Sansa. So Sansa is Sansa Stark is 11. She's this aristocratic flowers girl that wants her gallant prince to come in to save her, and she's very against hanging out with commoners, which is quite different from Arya Stark, which is a very tough and a bit of a tomboy style girl sibling, and she's 9. And Sansa ends up learning that the facade of her boyfriend, Prince Joffrey, is actually quite evil and wrong, and she only realizes that once the head of her dad is chopped off. However, Arya is very tough, and the father is a bit quite open-minded to his children. So he raised his bastard son alongside the others, and he let Arya learn some sword dancing. So he let her train with a sword. And then you've got you have the middle son, who's 7, and he early on becomes handicapped when he sees the Lannister twins having sex with each other, practicing incest. Then there's Jon Snow, so he's about as old as the oldest son of the Stark family, but since he's a bastard, and a bastard is conceiving of a child conceived out of marriage, and illegitimate child, so he's got the father's blood but not the mother's blood, so it doesn't count. He doesn't have any rights, but he's treated as a half aristocrat. He's aristocratic, you could say, and he gets the nickname Lord Snow. And then there's Tyrone Lannister. So this is the most likable Lannister. He's very likable, and he's also smart and quite funny, and he's a dwarf, so maybe that's why he's likable, because he's a dwarf. And then you've got Daenerys Targaryen, who along with her brother Viserys is the last of the House of Targaryen, which was slaughtered in the last war between houses. Because previously we've had a war between the Targaryens and the House of Baratheon, and the House of Baratheon ended up winning. So you've got King Robert, but when King Robert dies, the Game of Thrones truly begins, and this happens in the second half of the book. So that's the most intriguing part of the second half. The first part is a build up to it, and of course, Daenerys Targaryen, we get to see her experiencing being outside on another continent, and she's married off to a Khal, and the Khal is the chiefdom of Khalasar, and Khalasar is basically a tribe of some nomadic people on the island. And she becomes Khaleesi, as she's married, and she witnesses the death of her brother, and her husband ends up dying. And at the end, she cracks open the dragon eggs she has had for a long time, and for the first time in over, I think, 300 years, there are new dragons. So, and the houses, they talk about the 7 kingdoms, but there are more than 7 houses. So, but we don't really get to interact with most of them, with all of them. So, you've got the House Baratheon, who is the ruler, Robert Baratheon, and he's got a couple of brothers, Stannis and Renly. And then you've got the House of Stark. So the House of Stark is the honorable one. So the man who passes the sentence of death for someone, for example, someone of the Night Watch who has deserted, he's the one who beheads the person. And then you've got the House of Lannister, which are basically violent psychopaths mostly, and who aren't really loyal and slaughter people right and left, and they're crazy. And then you've got the House of Arryn, which is allied with the House of Tully and House of Stark, since through marriage. The House of Tully is allied with the House of Stark in Arryn, and Arryn through marriage too. That's where Catelyn origin comes from. House of Tyrell and Martell, we don't really hear a lot of anything about, I think. The Greyjoy house, apart from Theon Greyjoy, nothing about it really. And then the Targaryen, who ruled Westeros for about 300 years until about 15 years ago, and they're referred to the Old Dynasty, and now they're in exile. Yeah, you got some other. You've got a lot of things. There's a lot of world building, and I think that in the beginning it may be a bit slow, but it's pretty good world building. For example, you've got the Night Watch, so you got this wall in the north that they have built to a giant wall, which they have built to against some non-human, some post-death things out there. So and that's guarded by the Night Watch. And if you desert as a Night Watchman, then you're sentenced to death if you're caught. And the Night Watch also gets killed by the others. And then in the hierarchy, and the Night Watch is always neutral during the wars, because it doesn't matter for them. They got the monsters and other things to worry about. And then you've got the hierarchy of things. So you've got the king at the top with his family. And you got the lords, and then you got the knights. So that's the important people. And an interesting thing about it, you've got some pets in this book, and it's the pets of the Stark family. So early on in the book, they found a bunch of baby direwolves cubs. So they're these extremely ferocious animals, a bit like wolves, but more strong. But they're found as cubs, so as puppies. So they are each raised by a child Stark. So yeah, and you get them interacting. They play a central plot in the story often, and save characters and kill a lot of people. And one of them, the lady, the direwolf of Sansa, is killed innocently because of incident between the Prince Joffrey and Arya. And there's a poor commoner boy who's killed for daring to play with a noble lady, which was Arya, and Arya is very sad. And then you've got another rank in each of the kingdoms. So they've got these masters, so they're basically magic men. So they're healers and they give advice. And you've got the King's Guard to protect the king. And you've had previously Jaime Lannister betray the previous king of Targaryen. And there's 7 of them. And the honorable current leader of them is forcefully removed by the new king, Joffrey. Yeah, forced to resign even if he was good king. And then we get to see how the Kalazar works on the other side of on the other continent, and they've got this peace city, Vastotrak, I think it's called, where no swords are allowed, no violence. So and when no threats, and when Viserys breaks that rule, he is killed in a very brutal and violent way. His head is turned to has gold and hot gold poured on his head. And at the end of the book, you've got 3 people claiming the crown. So by blood, rightfully, it should be Stannis, Lord Stannis Baratheon. He should become the new king. But it does. So you got the 3 claimants end up becoming. So first you've got. So Lord Eddard was supposed to be Lord Protector until Prince Joffrey turned 16, but the Lannisters do some funky, crazy stuff, ignore the rules and kill the Lord Protector himself. So he's claimed king, King Joffrey. And then you've got later on Lord Stannis, Baratheon, who claims he's king even if he's not the senior of the Baratheon clan, so that's very weird. And then at the end, the House of Stark, which controls Winterfell and has previously been king and were referred to king in the north. They were king a few centuries ago. Well, they decide no, it's our time to become the ruling house again. So they declare Robb Stark, the current senior of the Stark family, to become king. So you got 3 king. You got a Baratheon king, a Stark king, and a Lannister king. Now, the Stark family is very likable, I think. Yeah, but and then you've got the House Lannisters, which is very unlikable, but it's nuanced. You've got people in House Lannisters, or you've got Tyrone in House Lannister is likable, and and then you've got in House Stark. Sansa, I think, wasn't really likable often. So yes, and this is, you could call this, even if this is epic fantasy, this is I call this an exploration of the times of medieval times in this so-called Westeros and 7 Kingdoms, because this is a good way to learn about at least the higher levels of feudalism with the knights and the lords and kings, princes, and things like that. So yes, long read, but how would I rate this read? So it starts out maybe a bit low, and there are maybe some moments that are not as good as they could be, but I would still rate this book 9 out of 10. So yeah, it's a great book. It's a great read, and I'm impressed by George R. Martin's style of writing. So the thing is, it's a very large book, but a lot of things happen of it. Often large book is just authors describing things long. No, he describes things quite short actually. The death scenes aren't usually that really long. He goes from one thing to another, and he goes from these 7 different character perspectives. So yeah, it's well written, and there are some minor flaws in it, but otherwise 9 out of 10, great book. So A Game of Thrones, you wrote your first book while George R.R. Martin. I hope your later books are continue being as great and maybe even get better. So that was the Avid Reader's review of A Game of Thrones, written by George R.R. Martin in 1996. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you guys next time.